Hey, so we're the last session today, so if you guys want to stay a little later and talk a little bit longer, let us know. My name is Rafael Fernandez, and
I'm Don Keeney.
I'm a solution engineer for the AEC team, that stands for Architecture, Engineering, and Construction. You are currently in the Esri BIM-GIS roadmap, so if you're looking for a different session, hopefully you're not. You're in the right place. So today we're going to just start off by talking a little bit about this new, well, actually before I begin, how many of you went to the EPC? So a few of you? Okay. So some of this might be a little bit of a review. How many of you went to Nathan Shefford's pro discussion as well? Nope. Okay, cool. So today we're just going to talk real quickly about what is happening in the world of GIS. And so for many of you who don't know, Autodesk and Esri have announced a partnership that came out about last November, this past November. And what we're looking to do is really understand how we can take these two behemoths and platforms and bring them together to support the industry a little bit more. One of the initial ways that we're sort of seeing this integration take place is through applying context within the design process. And so you want to take the information that you have in GIS, bring it in to a detailed area so that you can really get that high level of information and authoritative content so that you can build the correct building in the right place, per se, or content in the right place. So this is a slide that we call the executive slide. It's really giving us a general overview and initially for us to understand where the GIS lifecycle lives and where the BIM lifecycle lives. Now, I've seen this slide sort of taken down, and on the left side, this is more could be called asset portfolios, operations management, and on the other side is more capital projects or BIM projects as well. But this gave us an initial understanding with Autodesk to really understand where the two play. And now we know that there's a lot more information going back and forth, and there's different places where software can integrate, but this allowed us a starting place to give us some context of what's going on. Now, within AEC as an industry, what we're trying to do is really help the AEC companies understand how GIS supports new workflows, migrating them to modern patterns of GIS. We're trying to help them by applying with strategic partnerships, like this Autodesk partnership. And then finally, we have this new product that allows us to do some better collaboration. And if you want to know more about that, we can talk offline about the collaboration, what we're doing there through the project lifecycle. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Don Keeney.
Yeah, my name again is Don Keeney. I'm a 3D product manager at Esri, where I have been focusing on that area of CAD and ever increasingly BIM for the last 25 years. And so I think that a lot of conversations with a lot of people recently with the announcement with Autodesk moving forward. It's a space that we have been working in for quite some time, but I think there's an ever increasing urgency in the marketplace that has kind of brought these two things together even more in a more timely manner. BIM, building information management, building information modeling, however you want to paste together that last part, really works. And it helps save people money in construction, primarily, I think, because it reduces uncertainty, right? It reduces uncertainty throughout a really complex workflow. And I think that GIS is another one of those technologies that really help to reduce uncertainty by bringing together information, right? So a geographic information system is a great place to work with building information models and information. Again, obviously you may have seen this before, where information is the key, right? So working with all kinds of information, including building information within a geographic information system. So again, this slide comes up. I think this slide, if you really look at it for a little while, a lot of thought went into it. There's this idea that there's this horizontal link kind of on the GIS that kind of goes across a lot of things. There's this vertical link that has about capital projects that are cyclical. This is also intended to have motion, that there's not just one place where this information crosses. In some ways, it's a gross oversimplification of the life cycles of projects that are happening all over. I use this to show all the different wheels that have to come together to move things forward. So at its most basic, there are these many touch points between information in infrastructure life cycle, right? And so I think Raphael has shown that similar slide with additional links into it, and it really just turns into the situation where wherever you are in a process, you need information to help support it. And so you'll see that there'll be many, many touch points between GIS and BIM moving forward. And at its most basic, this slide, I think, I'll go back one. The idea that GIS informs the BIM process, right? So when you're working in a design application, the design constraints are oftentimes stored in a GIS. You know, what are the soils? What is the existing infrastructure? What are the regulations in this particular geographic area? Slopes, all those type of information is typically acquired and accessed in a design process, but is also stored in GIS. Once information is built, infrastructure becomes the new base map, essentially. So that BIM information then becomes the existing condition, and that's how we get this larger life cycle. And so those are the types of things that we want to pursue in our roadmap at the most basic. So we have a 3D platform that we can use to help support this information and these workflows coming together. Some of the tools you just saw in the previous session, the idea of having the ability to interactively work with information in a 3D environment that came from many different sources, whether that was BIM sourced information or information that came through CAD, through many different possible sources, but that can be combined together and analyzed, queried, and understood together. So we're not necessarily trying to reinvent BIM. We're not going to come out with an architectural design application. We are always improving our 3D capabilities, however, throughout the platform, whether that be multi-patch editing in ArcGIS Pro, the ability to bring in many different types of data sources in 3D and see them in a common environment. So that is something that we will continue to do. We have our cached 3D scene services, the ability to pull together huge amounts of information and then stream it back to you in a cached format through all kinds of different experiences on the web, through the desktop, and even mobile applications moving forward. This idea where we can take lots of information like these millions of buildings, textured buildings, and be able to fly through them in an easy to work with experience. We have multiple flavors of these, what we call I3S layers. The 3D objects are these textured boxes. We also have a concept of a mesh, so it's a continuous surface of the globe. This is the type of information that you might commonly get through drone sourced information or others. The idea to have this mesh view of the world we can take into account. Also, very exciting point cloud information, being able to take LiDAR information or mobile collected information, huge amounts of data, and still be able to stream it in this common environment along with all different types of information. So point cloud I3S is another type of information that we can display. These formats are being adopted by more and more companies, more and more people being able to both consume them and create them. It has become an OGC community standard, this I3S format. Business partners like Melon and Bentley's Context Capture generate this format that people can use. These 3D capabilities can be used for more than just geography. We can take information from geoanalytics and display it in 3D, using things like 3D cities as a canvas that we can draw upon. We can think of GIS in some ways as being this geospatial interface to all different types of information. including BIM. On the left-hand side is an example from a business partner, Indoor Reality, where they have a backpack and they run through a building and they have a scan to BIM process that creates Revit models, but also keeps track of the locations where they have this spherical imagery. They've built an interface between the web scene that they can click on and then launch into one of those experiences. On the right-hand side, you'll see a couple versions of this idea where I can create web scenes based on BIM-sourced information and then retain a link back to a cloud-to-cloud type of access to the original BIM content in a content system like Autodesk BIM 360. We can also see that the GIS can become the source information for AR and VR experiences, which can be very useful in an AEC context for not only construction, but even pre-visualizing designs on site. So again, that idea that a GIS can spatially organize all different kinds of information. As we look forward in the roadmap, we can look at some of the existing patterns that we have. Things like ArcGIS for AutoCAD, which is an Autodesk design app, but there's a free plugin from Esri that allows it to become a client of the ArcGIS platform. So I can use plain AutoCAD to create ArcGIS data, and it also becomes a GIS interface or a CAD interface to the ArcGIS system through web services. So if I look at that pattern and use it as an example, we can look at across the line of other design apps, for example, at Autodesk InfraWorks or Revit. These are other design apps that probably could benefit by a better connection to the ArcGIS platform. Using ArcGIS for AutoCAD, I can create data in CAD that can be GIS data sets. That information can be stored directly in a file-based workflow. That information can be directly read by ArcGIS Desktop. Any information in ArcGIS can be served out through ArcGIS Server. Using a tool like ArcGIS for AutoCAD, you can also access that information through RESTful services back in AutoCAD, even to the point of editing that geodatabase information through feature services. So look for that pattern to continue, using the existing web RESTful services as a common platform so that you can collect information, for example, but with ArcGIS Collector, and then view it directly in AutoCAD, looking at the same services. Having that information connected up to operations dashboards. And I think Raphael's going to show us an example of that in just a second. So specifically, what about the BIM roadmap? I think if anyone has been looking at this space, you see some of these graphics down up there at the bottom. BIM level 1, BIM level 2, and there's one up there, BIM level 8. I think that as we start in this journey, we're going to try to do some stepwise things to make things easier, right? We're not going to solve the entire problem all at once, but certainly geospatial is a big part of BIM moving forward, right? So what does that workflow look like today? Right now, ArcGIS Desktop through the data interoperability extension has the ability to read IFC files. So I can be in Revit or Bentley Architecture or ArchiCAD and export information into an IFC file. I can take that IFC information and generate 3D objects in ArcGIS. I can somehow try to figure out how to georeference it on the globe. I can share it out in web scenes. One of the things that we'd like to improve in the future is, looking at this somewhat complicated, method of getting information in and greatly simplify it, right? So sometimes I like to apologize for this graphic, not because it's, ugly, but because it's true right now. And so we really want to make it easier. And so one of the first ways that we're going to try to remove some of these barriers is to make a simpler method of getting BIM information into the ArcGIS platform. So in ArcGIS Pro 2.2, we're looking at reading directly Revit models as a data source in the similar way that we do with CAD now. One of the things that I think this is going to do is it's going to help to start to bring some clarity to people, at least in the GIS world, as to what is in a BIM. So when I say, I'm mandating BIM in my country, or I'm mandating BIM in our organization because it's going to solve all of our problems. Once I put the information in, it can be used throughout the life cycle for asset management, for facilities management, and all these marvelous, wonderful things. The truth be told is there's no information in a BIM model that somebody didn't put in the BIM model. I think it's a big surprise to a lot of people, for example, that there are no such things as rooms or spaces in a BIM model. There's not even such thing as a building. Some of these constructs are fundamental to things like facilities management, where we're talking about, I need to know what building it's in, I need to know what floor it's on, I need to know what space it's in. All of those things are not even fundamental objects in Revit. But there are certainly ways that you can put that information in there. So I look at what are the different kinds of BIMs. There's BIMs that only have in them like electrical conduit. Other BIMs have just structural detailing in them. Some BIMs only have the outside of the building. And so when we talk about BIM in the context of Revit, I think this ability to read a BIM model directly, a GIS person is going to see what's in there. And help educate people to what should be in there, right? So when we've been talking with customers, we're trying to understand what can we do to give the most benefit to the most people. And so what people are asking for are really two different things, two different buckets of technology that they want to get out of BIM data. BIM data. One is they want to just see the thing. I just want to see it in its geographic context. I want to see the building. There's this new design coming down. I want to see how it fits into the existing environment. We want to sell this idea to somebody, but they need to be able to see it. So visualization, I just want basic. I want to see it. I want to be able to touch it. I want to maybe get some basic information about what this thing is. And on the other side, I want to be able to harvest that BIM model for its content. I want to harvest asset information, or I do want to pull out floor plan information, and I want to repurpose it for doing things like indoor mapping and asset management and operations and maintenance information. So really two different tacks that people want to get out of this information. And so we're trying to take a look at that file in its most useful way to do both. So what are we going to do? Well, we have this existing CAD technology, and what do we do with a CAD file? We can open it up in ArcGIS Desktop directly, and we organize it into GIS feature classes from the very beginning. We basically abstract or interpret the CAD drawing as if it were a GIS data set. So we collect all the lines, all the points, and all the polygons together, and we call those feature classes. We have designed a way to store GIS information in AutoCAD DWG files, and so those green boxes, rooms, and walls, those could be created with ArcGIS for AutoCAD, in which case those are explicitly GIS data sets that could be in that DWG file. Whenever you export data from ArcGIS Desktop into a DWG file, you will get attributed feature classes. AutoCAD people may not see them unless they had ArcGIS for AutoCAD, but that data is there. So what about a Revit model? Really, we're going to do the same type of thing. One of the things about a Revit model is that it's semantically more structured. So instead of just lines that are on some layer, we have an idea that these are walls, these are windows, these are roof elements, these are electrical conduit. So there are a discrete number of what are called categories inside of a Revit model. There's only like 50 of them. And so we're going to map them directly to a feature class. So there's going to be a walls feature class. There's going to be a windows feature class. When you open up that model, you'll have direct access to that information, including any attribute or parametric information that is associated with those. So the idea is that we can jump across a lot of these steps in integration. Partners like Safe Software are also going to be able to help accelerate the path to moving data. They're also working on their own Revit reader, but one of the other interesting things that they're doing is they're allowing you to take information from all different types of sources and go directly to I3S, which is another shortcut path. One of the things that we quickly realize is that there's a difference between seeing a million things, a million boxes across a city, one of the problems that we're going to quickly run into is we're going to get a lot of dense geographic information from BIM models. And so on the left-hand side, you'll notice that the entire city of San Francisco in this little demo project has been shrunken down and set on the rooftop of one of the buildings in San Francisco. We call this the mini San Francisco demo. We need to be able to work with millions of things in millions of buildings and be able to still get that information into a web scene. On the right-hand side is some example of some existing BIM information in a web scene. We also realize that BIM and the BIM process involves infrastructure in general. So this includes a lot of the civil types of applications as well. So we also have our eyes on looking at how to better integrate products across the line with civil applications like Civil 3D. InfraWorks is one that we've seen. So I'm going to here's a quick view of what this might look like. Here I am in Revit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom parameter. So I'm in Revit, and just to say that I can create any attribute I want and assign it to groups of information. Here I'm going to assign this attribute to the roofs. So if I wanted to collect COBie data for asset management on different objects, I could enter that in a more structured format, or really any information. Here I am in ArcGIS Pro. This is a development version of Pro 2.2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that information that I just modified here into ArcGIS Pro. And when we get the attribute information for objects, we're going to favor those that were created by the user. Right? There are actually thousands of different parametric values that we could have pulled in for how you construct geometry, but that's really not what we're interested in. We're interested more in those things that identify the object, and so favoring those things that are nominal. This is a 2x4 or that type of thing, rather than how many, what's the angle of the back steps of a staircase. Not so interested in. What I'm going to do now is this information is already GIS information, so I'm going to load it into a GP tool and export it to AutoCAD. So follow me here. I was in Autodesk Revit. I loaded this file right into ArcGIS Pro. I put it into a GP tool, exported it to a DWG file. Now I'm loading it up in ArcGIS for AutoCAD. And I'm taking a look at this same roof element, and you can see all those properties now here in AutoCAD that came through. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of Revit as a data source, something that we intend to include in Pro 2.2. Next, I think Raphael is going to show us a little application that he built that includes some of this information. Take it away, Raphael.
Yeah, sorry guys, I closed the window, so just bear with me real quickly. So this is a little JavaScript application that we created to really illustrate some of that ability to tie back to the Forge viewer in AutoCAD A360. Don,
What's Forge? What's BIM 360?
BIM 360 is Autodesk Cloud, which allows them to host Revit content, design documentations, everything that you would need to understand what this BIM model is. And so in this screen, what I have is this JavaScript app, which allows a project manager potentially to understand what's going on the site, gives them context of what's happening. I've loaded 8 BIM models in here and 1 bridge. And so we've got 9 different BIM assets in here, and I can then come through, let's pin back the performance indicators, and click on an asset and view it in Forge. So what I did here was I clicked on a model that I was created from Revit.
And that's in a web scene.
In a web scene, an ArcGIS web scene. I then linked out to the Forge model that's living in the Autodesk Cloud. And now I can visualize all of the assets and that visualization in the Forge viewer here.
So this is the actual BIM model in BIM 360.
Within that BIM 360 model, I can actually look at all the design sheets and that documentation. And these are live sheets. I can click on them. I can interact with the assets. I begin to understand what they are, how they need to be built, what's happening with them. And this also allows me to do markup, measure assets, begin to understand what's going on. And so as a site monitor, like a site manager for this, I can actually have all the information that I need here to make sure that our project is on time and on budget. Right?
So we got the Esri web scene viewer on the left and the Autodesk large model viewer on the right.
Yeah. And then my little favorite thing to do is explode this model to begin to see all the sequencing and all the different assets within it. And so we're not actually looking to load all of this data into the ArcGIS web scene. What we've done is we've taken the massings, the assets that are really important to us, and we've used that to link out and identify the documentation that we need from the Forge viewer. And so we're mashing up the two clouds so that we can get a better perspective of what's going on.
That was awesome.
That's it. Do you guys have any questions?
Question in the back.
Back first.
Yeah, so look, let me try to paraphrase the question, and maybe you can repeat it if I miss it. Is you're saying that some of this information or some of these projects were ongoing before the Esri partnership? How much momentum are they going to be getting now that the Esri Autodesk partnership has been announced? Is that essentially the question? Okay, so it's. Yes, so some of this work has been ongoing for a little while. It's certainly going to be accelerated, and it has been accelerated because of the partnership announcement. Some of the technology, like for example, that was shown a couple days ago when Autodesk was connecting their InfraWorks to ArcGIS Online, is completely developed since that time frame. You know, it was direct result of that. The direct reading of Revit models has been an ongoing effort within Esri, and so the timing just kind of matched up. ArcGIS for AutoCAD is almost a decade old, over a decade old, and it will continue but also accelerate. So one of those things that we identified in the roadmap is that we need to do a better job of connecting it to Civil 3D to help, across the entire life cycle. So those projects are just being accelerated, and there's weekly meetings that I'm involved in. We were just in Autodesk 2 weeks ago, discussing how to move all these things forward. So the short answer is yes, we have been working on our own path. Some of them have been in parallel, but that announcement has really accelerated and reduced barriers to moving forward.
And also to add to that, we're also working to better understand those graphical wheels. Remember those two executive slides that we called it previously? To really understand what that entire design workflow looks like, and so that we can both identify which software package is best at what stage and how we can together solve some of those issues.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to consume a complete Revit model into ArcGIS, and then we can serve it up as a feature layer?
So the question was, so tell me if I'm right, I can take a Revit model, an entire Revit model, and I can pull it into ArcGIS and then serve it out as a web scene. Yes, you can do that, right? Yeah. So you'll have to make smart choices about how much information you want to provide, at what level of detail. I mentioned that we currently have ways to display that information in our cached 3D objects format. I also mentioned that we're looking at ways to improve its performance, but also looking at ways to maybe come up with another profile of I3S that's even better at that dense form of data for buildings.
When can we have it?
You can have the ability to directly read Revit models and save them out to 3D scenes at Pro 2.2. That's the schedule. Like any Esri.
UC.
Any Esri product, if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it, but it's planned for 2.2.
Being a civil engineer, are you going to make nice with Bentley to do the same thing with that.
So follow-up question. Because you're also working in civil engineering, you're going to do the same thing with Bentley. Well, there are certainly patterns that could be used across any third-party developer, and so we're certainly welcoming that same pattern for really anyone. There's nothing really that isn't part of our existing APIs and tools sets to do that. Yeah.
Bentley doesn't share very well.
So, leave that. Another question.
Can you tell us more about what you're saying on accelerating?
Did you hear that? Can you tell us more about what's accelerating with ArcGIS for AutoCAD?
Can you tell us more? Okay, so can you tell us more about ArcGIS for AutoCAD and how that's being accelerated?
Last roadmap that he has is very slow.
Okay, so yeah, so the roadmap for ArcGIS for AutoCAD, its acceleration is part of that is hiring more people to do more projects. But in the ArcGIS for AutoCAD roadmap, the next release, we're going to be adding portal and online support. So right now you can connect to services in an enterprise server. We need to be able to understand identity and also connect to portal services. In the release after that, it's scheduled to include hosted services. So those are slightly two different things. One is first being able to understand the identity of the user so you can get my content in my groups. Then the second one would be to also support hosted services that have just been recently enhanced to include curve support, which is something that ArcGIS for AutoCAD has always been able to done through SOAP, but now there's a RESTful way to edit curves also. That just came out in 10.6. Also enhancing that would also, we're also looking at multi-patch as another service that has been recently been enabled at 10.6. So that would be a whole new thing in ArcGIS for AutoCAD.
Yep.
We also get information about material schedules. That will be able to read those information.
Sorry, can you speak up?
She's looking for additional information like schedules and materials and whatnot that's in the Revit model. Can you guys get at that?
So questions about what about the materials of that information? What about schedules in a Revit model? What about floor plans? What about asset points? So in the first release, we're going to look at harvesting out the 3D objects. So there'll be essentially multi-patch feature classes. If you think about a schedule is nothing more than a query filter of the properties that are on the elements. If you didn't know that, that's essentially what they are. So that information is actually on the objects that you could query with ArcGIS, but sure, they're already created for us. Why don't we just get those? So in the second release of this, we're going to look at supporting more of the asset management and facilities management workflows, which would include things like 2.5D objects, instancing of 3D objects as points instead. So instead of a 3D chair, you'll have the option to give me a 2.5D chair that's a point, right? Do I really need a 3D chair, or do I just want to know that those assets are in that room? So there are different workflows. Schedules, we can support as potentially tables. So you could open up the Revit model and see a bunch of table elements as schedule tables. So that's another thing we're looking at. And then also very valuable, if they've created floor plans, that information can be very valuable. In Revit, the Revit elements can actually be polymorphic. That can mean one door could be a 3D door, but it could also be a 2D door. So we're looking at potentially being able to extract that information. So be able to extract doors as door swings, or doors as points, or doors as 3D doors. Those are all things laid out before us. We would certainly be willing to hear from people, to help us navigate that as far as priorities are concerned. But in the first release, you'll get 3D features. And then from there, we're looking at things like floor plans, schedules, instancing of assets as an option, or others.
Yep. So I think I heard the question. It's if you pan around one model, can you also pan around the other? can you link the two models? I did not see the ability to link the two models in the API, but I'm sure that it's there. Another thing that you could do is you could actually have the attribution in the specific asset within the model. So you see here, I'm loading the entire model here with this BIM viewer here, the Autodesk viewer. But what you could do is actually have that wall be tied to the wall in the Forge viewer and back and forth. For the sake of the demo, we just didn't have time to throw that together. But so then you can have some more interaction with each other. What was the second question? I can. Pulling the Forge model directly into a web scene.
Is there plans to take a Forge or a Revit model that's maybe been loaded up into BIM 360 and go directly into a 3D scene? It's certainly been talked about. So one of the possible integration points that we could have is the idea of linking the two clouds together, right? Coming up with some way to have the repository of BIM 360 automatically update a collection of buildings in a web scene. That will require some more tech than we have currently, but those are the types of conversations we're having. So when we talk about I3S, there are projects that we're working on to do things like incremental updates of that cache, because this information could potentially be really huge. And so coming up with incremental updates to cut out parts and replace just part of that cache are things that we're talking about, which is, I think, necessary when you're talking about having a collection of BIM models that have to do a single web scene update. I don't know if you really want a single web scene layer for every single building, but there'll be choices that you'll have to make as a developer, and customers will have to make choices about that. But it's certainly something we're thinking about. I mean, we're thinking about the problem. We know the problem exists and we want to solve it. How we're going to solve it is what we're talking about. Back here. Well, let's go behind you, right here.
Are there plans in ArcGIS Pro to have a plan and profile tool that works just like Simple Stream that can be used in conjunction with a map series or the
So are there plans in ArcGIS Pro to have a cross-section profile and cross-sectioning tool? There are some. They may not be exactly the way that you thought of them, but one of the Pro 2.2 tools that Nathan Shepard showed in the road ahead is a clipping tool. You basically push a plane through the model and it looks very similar to what you just saw. So I think for some of that, yes, and you have this plane that you can rotate top down or push through. That will be an interactive tool. I think there are also people requesting, I want to take a snapshot of that and I want to draw an architectural cross-section of a roadway, which includes the building and the trees and the trolley and the people. That's a separate type of tool. But the first one that you will see is that interactive pushing plane to clip the visual 3D elements. And it's really cool. You should see if you can't get your eyes on that before you leave. What?
What about room zones and what's the other one? Spaces?
Okay, so what about room zones and spaces? Those are the elements in Revit that could be used for asset management rooms and spaces. They're 2D objects, and so we'll pick them up in the next round. In the first release, we're focusing on the 3D objects that will be turned into multi-patch. In the subsequent release, whatever that is, we'll pick up the 2D objects, which will be points, areas, and lines. Those areas, zones, and spaces will be those 2D elements that will, like I said, help you more specifically in the asset management and facilities management arena.
Can we make a what? Can I make this public? No.
Here, throw up mine.
Where's yours? Don has one that is public.
Oscar from Esri, Germany has one that he made that, just click that.
I did.
Just click that picture. So this is an example that's just out there. I don't know what it's called, but this is a similar simple version of it. It's just a single bridge. And if you click it, yeah. So it's a similar idea. These two models are linked. I'm not sure how valuable that might be to you, but that is one that's showed everywhere. Oh, there it is. So you can, well, it's hard. We can't see this on our machine, so. Explode it. That's the fun thing to do.
So this one's public. Yeah. The app that I put together isn't much more coding on top of this.
Yeah, if you go just to arcgis.com and look at UK-wide buildings, there's another BIM data set up there of 4 buildings on the University of Kentucky campus.
Yep.
You can get an idea of the performance of the normal 3D objects without any special BIM-related techniques.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Thanks, guys.